Hello, good afternoon, everybody. It's by somewhere it's good morning because this is a virtual meeting, so I was actually right how I want us to start it. So I'd like to welcome Mark Kuhl from Corteva AgriScience and Bernie Sletsky from retired from ASTA, but she is now the chair of the coordination group Plant Breeding Innovation. So we just finalized a very interesting panel about future-proof policy and policy alignment around plant breeding innovation. Probably more to the general public, we are speaking about genome editing or gene editing. I think it's a pity that who are listening us and they couldn't attend this panel because it was a very engaging one. We went through very interesting topics, and yeah, we don't really want to repeat the whole discussion we had a few moments ago. We would like to highlight a couple of interesting elements which may be interesting for those ones who are listening us through our video channel. So basically, there was a lot of discussion about regulations and policies, and we heard from the audience this different perspective that what we see today around policies around genome editing, PBI, this is a kind of patchwork of regulations, asynchronous policies, but also we heard that indeed there are differences, but the overall trend is positive. So what we see, it's more of a kind of progression, which absolutely leads to a positive trend of supporting and accepting genome editing technologies. So, Bernice, how you see this policy alignment today? What is your impression about it?
Well, I agree with you that this is really a progression. Some governments are ahead of others in terms of actually developing policy and then implementing that policy, so it is a progression. We have a map at ISF that we've been keeping for the last 7 years, and yesterday I was looking at the first map and the one we have today, and the first map was all gray with the exception of one country that had a good policy in place. The rest of the world really hadn't even, they begun to think about things, but really hadn't done anything. And today you can see whole areas that are what we call green, and so it really is a progression. I would say the one underlying area across these countries is we're seeing a growing recognition among countries that certain categories of gene-edited products should not be treated the same as a GMO, for example. And so and we all know the difficulties we've had with regulations around GMOs.
So it's indeed an overall positive trend because most of the countries who are already decided a policy direction, they made a kind of clear distinction that most of the genome-edited products won't be regulated as biotech, and this is a huge step forwards. And it's another question how the actual regulation will look like, but this first step was very crucial. Do you want to add something, or can you say some examples, Mark? So which are the countries and regions where this started very early and we are looking at them as a kind of model for other countries to follow?
Yeah, so Bernice mentioned Argentina. So Argentina clearly was the first country in the world to be able to find a way within their legal and regulatory structure to put a policy in place that saw gene-edited products not as GMO, and that was a very useful example. But importantly, what has now happened over the last 7 years is that there's an active intent within Latin America to align policy outcomes amongst different countries. So each country has their own regulatory and legal framework, But within that framework, if the end goal is similar and if they're as much as possible aligned, that's very, very useful. And this example in Latin America is actually actively being used elsewhere as an example, and that's a very positive direction for the world. The other comment I would make is not only is the policy outcome important, but also the information needed to create the policy outcome. So if a country such as Japan does not regulate a gene-edited product as a GMO if there is no foreign DNA in it, that's great, but how do you show that? What data do you provide? And if those are as much as possible aligned also, that helps. And the discussions on that area are active and positive.
So, yeah?
I'm just going to add something, if that's all right, that we also discussed, and that is for a lot of regulations for GM products make a distinction between import and food and cultivation. And we saw a lot of countries only put in regulations around import approvals. And that is not what's happening around genome-edited products. In fact, most of the countries that have put policies in place are focused on cultivation. And they're doing it because they've invested a lot in this technology and research in this technology, some of it from their public research institutes. And they see this as, they see their role as helping to facilitate their domestic researchers and industry.
Yeah, thank you. This is a very, very good summary. And you mentioned, Mark, South America. But as we see this kind of policy map, actually we see very positive development in almost all continents now. So Latin America, but also Central America, there are some countries. If you look at Asia, it's Australia and Japan have a clear leading role, but even in Africa. So can you tell us about what's happening in Africa? Because sometimes when we are speaking in this area, we somehow don't touch this area, but there are quite good development in this continent as well.
Yeah, no, indeed, the same type of policy development is happening increasingly, I would say, and maybe faster and faster in many other countries around the world on all continents. So that's really important. And in Africa, you know, Nigeria, Kenya have very positive policies in place. South Africa is one of the countries that has recently taken a little bit of a step back, but you know, there's efforts underway to show them the advantage of number one, using innovation as a way to create value for their farmers and society and the economy, but also the important role South Africa has in being an example for the rest of Africa. So as countries actively look at other countries to see what they have done, there is active learning between countries, hopefully, and in the meantime, mostly positive. In Africa, we are very pleased to see some critical countries actually embrace innovation.
No matter which kind of forum you talk to, give a presentation to an audience, usually the first or second question that, yes, that's true and nice, but what's happening in Europe? So Bernice, what's happening in Europe? I know this is not your favorite topic, so we usually leave it to the folks from Europe, but we have two American colleagues here, so I have to ask this question. And I'm the moderator, so I cannot answer it, so please.
Now, I will attempt to answer it, and we see positive direction in Europe. It's going to take time, clearly, because they have to go through some political steps in order to really answer what was a court decision. I mean, in a way, it was imposed on them, and but we're seeing you know, high-level officials in Europe making the connection between innovation and the goals of Europe around sustainability, the Farm to Fork initiative. So making those higher level connections, and in order for those connections to actually happen, you have to have a regulatory and policy climate that allows those connections to be made. And it feels like there's a growing recognition of that. And then the other aspect is the research community has been extremely active in Europe, and they weren't during the discussions around GMOs.
So, yeah, Mark?
If I can add, so one of the things that happened in 2018 in this legal ruling, as Bernice says, is the judge said, here's what you must do. And there's increasing recognition that that ruling is not fit for purpose. So what is fit for purpose is the discussion going on, and that seems to be a positive discussion. And indeed, the local breeding community support for this is critical in every country, by the way. So there is hope that this will result in innovation environment that the politicians can see supports their political and social agenda of the Green Deal and Farm to Fork strategies, how those are connected and not opposing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very, very well said, Mark. So it means that there is hope, and what we've seen so far, the direction is clearly positive. We know decision making is a long process in the European Union, so potentially one of the most concerning is the timeline, because the rest of the world are moving ahead. We see new products in the pipeline. Many policies are being finalized, so this could be a little bit of concern in terms of seeing new products which are traded globally, because Europe will be always a kind of, I would say, a disturbing area if you are speaking about especially global trades, not just seeds, but for commodities or even fresh produce. So, yeah, we talked a little bit about the policy environment and how it is looked globally. And indeed, ISF closely monitoring what's happening, or try to closely monitor what's happening in the different countries, having the input from our companies, National Seed Association, Regional Seed Association as well. So I think we have a relatively good understanding what's happening. But as far as I know, ISF role doesn't stop here. We try to somehow influence this policy development. So what do you think, Bernice? And because you are the chair of the coordination group, I asked this question first from you. So what is the main role of ISF in this work of finding policy alignment in the different countries globally?
So early on, ISF made the decision that this was an area where we had to be proactive and that we didn't want to be reactive, but actually we wanted to articulate what we believe is the most rational, science-based approach that will enable the global seed industry to do their business, really. But yet, ISF, unless they're asked, would not go into a particular country or region and directly advocate. So we, again, early on decided that the best role and the most effective role for ISF is to be a facilitator in a couple different ways. A facilitator that would encourage and help governments talk among each other. That, start that conversation among key governments and key government officials within those governments. And then secondly, to help facilitate internally too. So to provide information to the NSAs, the regional seed associations, and to make sure that we're internally aligned to the extent possible as well, that we speak with one voice. And happily, I think we do. We all have that same goal.
Mark, do you want to add something?
No, I think the coordinating role ISF plays has been critical in establishing a framework and a common goal amongst the industry and bringing in other value chain stakeholders. And then the communication plan about what those goals are, how they can be achieved, and how we can support the goals with other work such as transparency initiatives, data sharing initiatives, those things, I think is a really a good role for ISF to play. But leaving, indeed, as you correctly say, Bernice, the local advocacy to the people who are best served doing that, and to whom the local regulators want to listen, which is the local people. And that's how the community of ISF really works really closely together. In a meeting like this with 1,500 people, a lot of opportunities for information sharing, and we bring that one face then to the outside.
What is also interesting that different countries in the different stage. So this is posing a kind of challenge that how we can speak something which has been already taken care of in other countries as implemented, and but there are some other regions where the policy discussion just started. Can we leverage something from this kind of previous experiences and help them somehow? Because yeah, what we hear here that for this kind of policy area, there is no global organization, right? So there is no international organization who would oversee the different policy development in different countries. So I guess here there could be a crucial role from those countries who have experiences and positive experiences to somehow help the new countries to bring them up to speed and sharing their experiences, what they gathered over the year. This is something happening among countries, this type of work?
To a certain extent. I think it happened early on in South America, certainly, where there was an active, first they were some of the first countries to start talking about this and developing their policies, but also to talk among each other so that there was a certain coherence within South America. But I think that's a good role for ISF, where we know that the system is working, and bringing, again, facilitating that conversation, to kind of show by example. Now, you may not be able to replicate totally a system that is in this country exactly to another country because they have different laws in place. They have, in some countries you have 3 ministries that are involved, in others you have 2. So it won't be completely, quote, harmonized, but showing examples of processes and policies that have really spurred innovation is always an opportunity that I think ISF should take advantage of.
And in this context, what does it mean that future-proof policies or future-proofing policies? I mean, does it mean that the policies which are already in place are not good enough, or because for me, especially if you see this evolution of regulation, a 5-6 years old regulation policy is pretty new, right? So but they already need to be updated. So what is kind of situation with this? Why the seed sector think that even if there are good supporting policies, we need to make sure that it's going to function in the future as well? So maybe start with you, Bernice, and Mark, you can add some thoughts about it.
I'm sure. Well, this is something that we have been discussing most recently at ISF, and how best to future-proof and continue to have policies that are fit for purpose, essentially. And government policies are always going to lag a little behind scientific advancements, but in this particular area, it's moving quite rapidly, and so when most of the countries have policies in place, there are very kind of simpler applications of these newer technologies. And so there are ways that you can integrate, quote, flexibility within a system that allows that system to evolve. So if in a sense, a country that doesn't have a mature policy, they have an opportunity to put that flexibility in. And for those countries that do have policies in place, I think it's it's incumbent upon us to, one, show them how our breeders not only are using these technologies now, but how they're going to do it in the future, so that they can at least now start thinking about it in the context of what they have now and how they can either interpret things or hopefully not have to redo a regulation.
I guess that from a developer perspective, like your company's Mark, for you it's essential because you're a scientific company. You do a lot of research. You keep up with the scientific advancement, and you would like to use as many new tools and applications as possible. So I imagine that you always get contact with your researchers, and they showing you new stuff, and you have the second thought. Okay, that's fine, but how we can make sure that we can put this product on the market? So this is the consideration from the company perspective, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. So developing a product in our industry takes, anywhere up to 15 years or longer, even for simple, crops that grow in one season, let alone crops like bushes and berries and trees and those kind of things. So you must look far ahead in advance to see what the policy will be to allow you to go to market. That's a known problem. I would say a future-proof policy is a policy based on the outcome of using a technology and not based on the technology itself. So the big problem with the biotech legislation that, for instance, in Europe has existed since the year 2001 is that it's specific on that technology. So when another technology comes or the technology changes, then you have to have a different policy environment. But if we can find a policy environment which frankly existed before biotech came, that talks about food must be safe, must be able to be grown, and must not harm the environment, and word that in a way that is agnostic of how it was developed, then as long as you as a breeding and food production industry comply with that, then products can flow through the market, and you're burdened by what innovation you can access, not what innovation you're allowed to use.
Thank you very much. I think it was a good segue about the product. So what's cooking, and what we can do about future trends, what kind of research projects are going on, and maybe about the first question about the developers themselves. And maybe again I turn to you, Mark, that sometimes you hear that that technology just for the big companies. This is true. This is only for the large multinational companies like yours, or there are other players who can start something in this space.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. And the reality of the current biotech system, I will say, so system means not only how research is applied, but also what policies exist, and then who is able to commercialize those products. Because it is so restrictive, also restricts then what companies, what crops, what geographies people can work in. And the intent with innovation generally is that it is used across as wide of array of crops and companies and types of organizations, public, private, partnerships, etc., and across a wide range of the world. And it is very, very sad if a new technology could only be used for large commodity crops, but not, for instance, for a crop such as cassava, manioc, or many of those smaller so-called orphan crops that actually feed people. If we can't have innovation in these crops, which have significant agronomic and other problems, then it is really sad that we're limiting ourselves on their use. So even as a large company, we have a very open desire that as many people as possible are able to access technology, because when everyone accesses technology, that creates a competitive environment that adds value for everybody, and everybody benefits from that. So one of the reasons that we have a very strong company out-licensing strategy with our technology and intellectual property is for this reason, to advance science. Because when mankind needs science and science is advanced, then humans everywhere benefit.
So it's, yeah, in summary, it means that if you have a higher regulatory burdens with administrative costs and other resources, it will limit the companies and the type of products which can be developed by this technology, right? And Bernice, you said during the panel that there are indeed positive examples. So countries like in Argentina who has a supportive policy framework, the situation is really positive in terms of the range of developers. Can you elaborate on this one maybe a little bit?
Sure. So I believe they've got between maybe 25 to 30 products that have gone through their process in Argentina. And if you compare the types of crops, the types of characteristics, and the types of developers that are going through that process versus those who've gone through the purely GMO process in Argentina, there's a striking difference. There's more diversity, both in developers, in crops, and in characteristics that are going through the gene editing process. And also, more globally, if you look at the research that's being done, and again, the kinds of crops, characteristics, and the types of entities that are doing this research, and a lot of it's pre-commercial research, but still the diversity there is really striking.
Yeah, so that's why we need this type of message when we are speaking with the policymakers all around the world, and also we need the public research community to be vocal, because many countries this help, because usually the governments listen more to their local sector, private and public, than voices from the international community. So I think, and in many countries this is happening, and in many countries this help to move the things forward and putting enabling policy in place. So I think it was, and this is what ISF always try to advocate, with not just the seed sector needs to be local, but also a public research down the road. We spoke a little bit in the panel about public acceptance, because this is, in the end, this is somehow a key driver for our innovation. What is your opinion about that? What would be the best way to convince the public? I would say not the public, the consumers. I think it's a better term, because we look at them not just opinion making, but the ones who are really consuming, eating our products. So Bernice, what would be for you the best way to convince the consumers about the benefits of these products?
Well, you hopefully don't have to convince them about the benefits of a product if the benefits are there, and if it's different companies and organizations have done consumer research around this, and if there is a product that has a clear benefit to their world, tastes better, it's easier to cook or to eat. There are a lot of different types of characteristics that have those kinds of direct benefits. They will probably buy it. And so focusing on, again, I think as we were saying, on the product and being very focused on the benefits of the product. So let's not try to sell the technology necessarily. We're in the business of selling products, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was one of the key messages came out from the discussion. And yeah, time as always, went very fast. So probably a last question from both of you. What was your key learning from this panel? If you want to carve out one good message, what would be? It could be yours, of course, if you still want to stick to it. But yeah, it's up to you.
Well, to me, a key summary, more so than a key message, was that we had a wide variety of participants in the discussion. So we had people from the value chain, we had people from small, very new startup companies involved in potatoes versus row crops, a wide diversity. And what I like very much is that because of such discussions, generally the thoughts, the direction, the opinions are very well aligned, even if people come from different directions. So to me, although we all use different words, we all kind of come to the same conclusion, and that conclusion is that we do need to be better as the seed industry generally in communicating benefits, communicating connections to policy goals, and communicating not what technologies are, but what they can do. And to me, that was a really good summary.
Well, I too, I think it's the nature of the discussion that we had, and there were a lot of comments and questions from the audience as well. And I think collectively, what's been so exciting is that we do have common goals, and how we reach those goals. There may be differences geographically, but if we didn't have a common goal, this would be a lot really tough. But that's just really not the case.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Mark and Bernice. Thank you very much for our big local audience. And thank you very much, all the viewers online. So this was our short summary about the Plant Breeding Innovation Panel at ISF Seed Congress. Bye from everyone.